In this video, we have the season finale of Slowboat Sailing Season 5, sailing in Australia. In this episode, Linus is going to meet up with Janna and Sophie and sail around Darwin, but more actually tour around Darwin, Australia, and do some boat work and get ready to haul out the boat. Subscribe to Slowboat Sailing, where we give you the stories of the most interesting sailors in the world and our round-the-world adventure. So, there are a few things to do in Darwin. One of them is to see the crocodiles at Crocodilus Park. And they also have the big birds. I think that's an emu there. And that's a fun place to go. A little touristy, but you get to hold the baby crocodile. There you go, Sophie. It's not scared at all of the baby crocodiles, and I got to hold it a little too. It was weird. And there's also some nice national parks around. Here we got this beautiful waterfall. I think this was Litchfield Park, if I remember correctly. And there were also some nice hikes there. So it was a worthwhile thing. There's a Wangay Loop walk we took. I personally like the national parks in the western United States, but this is a nice park, I think, and it's got some pretty nice views. And it was hot, but you could also swim at the waterfall there and cool off, and that is a pretty amazing gorge in Northern Territory of Australia. But unfortunately, Sophie and Janna eventually had to leave the boat, and it was time for me to haul it out. We eventually decided on a boatyard that actually was up in the mangroves. More on that on season 6. And when Janna and Sophie left, it was time for me to haul out the boat. And the first thing I did was anchor really close to the haul out place. But it was kind of rough. Alright, so I'm leaving today on Sunday. The haul out time is supposed to be 9 on Monday, and I'm just leaving the channel where, where Francis Bay is, and also where Tipperary is, and Bayview. That's the channel where people anchor in the channel, or they moor in the channel because there's no water at low tide. So, this is usually the easy part. I think typically it seems like the winds are south-southeast, about 10 knots. I'm a little bit before slack water. I'm about 30 minutes before slack water at the moment. We locked out about 35 minutes before slack water. We're making about 4 knots right now. I think the current is not making a big effect with 2200 RPM. So on flat water we should get close to 5,000 with that, but I think we've got some evidence. The worry is that we'll get square waves in the bigger ship channel as we head towards Fanny Bay. But right now, so far so good, and we should be in that during slack water, so the waves should be starting to lay down a bit. So we probably could sail this, but I'm probably not going to unless I need to, just because it's not a huge distance, at least this stretch. But the other thing is we're gonna be changing direction a lot, so we'll probably not be in the ship channel for this part. We just had NAFA come, and he installed a new fuel pump, and he thought that our fuel pump was working, but it was a little weak, and maybe that was the cause of the thing. So I had a brand new fuel pump, and he installed that. I also changed the mixing elbow, and I think I may have cracked where the mixing elbow meets the mixing elbow hose meets they're actually called two mixing elbows. There's one at the engine, and there's one further away from the engine, which is made out of fiberglass and metal. And so that's the one he repaired. And so I think we should be pretty good on the engine today. I'm fingers crossed. So first mechanic to look at the engine since 2019 when we put in the mounts and put in the new propeller shaft and coupling. But I think that in 2019 they also put in some new fuel lines to the injectors. But so first, non-me looking at it, nice to have NAFA's help there. One of the benefits of being in port, especially in a place where they speak your language. We're actually going pretty good. We're in the ship channel now, and we got following winds and seas. It seems like the seas have laid down. We're 15 minutes from slack water, even less, 10 minutes maybe. And so it's looking good. I think it's not always going to be like this. We're going to turn into Fanny Bay, and then we're probably going to go around the North Point and anchor in some deep depths around some shallow depths that at low tide would not be underwater, or would be too shallow for contango, that is. They would be underwater, but they'd be too skinny for contangos, 4-foot depths. But I don't think they're ever going to get too skinny for contangos depths based on the tide scale. It's typical. I think the lowest tide in the next few days is 2 feet, over 2 feet. And then the high tide is like 24 feet. So I think that should be fine. We're probably going to have to put out like 150 feet of chain and rode where we anchor. But we're trying to anchor close to the boatyard. So in the morning we don't have, because I think we'll have like adverse current. And then, we'll be wind against current too. So we don't want to have very long distance to that. So instead of having, 4 miles, the AIS alarm just goes off constantly. Maybe I should have turned it off for this recording, but yeah. So I mean, like when you're in port, if you got the AIS alarm, it just goes off nonstop. But I'm keeping it on just so I stay sharp. I'm not gonna do a lot of stuff in this area. There is a lot of traffic, so I'm going to stay at the helm. Yeah, so I think things are going really well right now. And then I kind of have a all day today, Sunday, to hang out on the boat at anchor. And then in the morning it should go. I probably should have confirmed that they said maybe they'd push it to Tuesday, but I think he said if he called, so he didn't call, so I'm gonna go on Monday. So and I'll call him in the morning as I'm picking up anchor. All right, bye-bye. Okay, so I'm anchored here off of North Point. The conditions were really good, but the engine died right next to the Cullen Bay and the reef there. I actually floated over the highest part of the reef at high tide, which is higher than charted, but still it was not close to running aground on the reef. But that would have been bad if I had. We are anchored here in this spot that is supposed to be like, it's gonna dry out at low tide. It should be like almost, this should be like 9-foot depths is my guess. That's what is charted. So it's plus 15. It was like 24, 23. And so I put out 150 feet because it's going to be plus 22. Then that's 5 times that is about 150. But that engine died, and I anchored after sailing a bit because I had some sailing angles into Fanny Bay, not too far from where I anchored before in Fanny Bay, and I kept on going because number one, I bled the engine. It did start right up after I bled at the secondary filter and the upper bleed screw, which both had a little bit of air, but really small amounts of air. And the primary filter also had no air. It really had no air in it, which was a big improvement from what I'd been seeing. So I do think maybe the new pump is doing a better job of like just bringing the stuff in. But there may be air ingress in other places in the system. And so, it's just one of those things we have to investigate. My hunch is that the hose around the lift pump may be going bad. It's been hard to tell because there's also been like salt water from the saltwater loop that's been getting on it too. So it's hard to say. But I just, obviously it would look different, but if you've been bleeding and you have salt water, it's all going to look a bit diesely, but not. So I don't know. It's not. I wouldn't say that's 100%. I would say maybe that's 40% chance of being what's the problem. But that particular loop, I cannot make. I cannot crimp. I think I might have to order that because it's not a normal hose. Everything else is kind of like a normal hose that you can easily replace, but not that little bit of hose there. So I don't know, but it could also be the connections there. It could be anywhere, to be honest, an air leak. But I was able to turn on the engine. It motored for an hour and a half. We had a favorable current going up to 7 knots, at 2,300 RPMs, which we should only be going about 5 knots. And that got us here. And so this was great in terms of timing, because next time in the morning, my haul out's at slack water, high tide, in the creek. And the creek is, is dry outside at low tide for sure. But when the tide is coming in, then I'm gonna have I think a wind against current situation, right? So, and then if I was coming around Fanny Bay, there would be even a different tides coming in, so I'd have an adverse current and then wind against current. So that would have been really bad. So by moving that 3+ miles from where I was anchored before to here, that means instead of almost 5 miles, it's 1.5 miles to the boat ramp where the haul out machine's going to pull me out. And so that's a lot easier to make, even if you're slowed by 3 knots, slowed to 3 knots or 2 knots. You still can do that if you're up anchor. And so I don't have to up anchor in the dark, and I don't have to go against the top of the current. I just have to beat when it's getting close to slack water. So I have to beat the current from 8 to 9, right? And I think I can do that. So I think if I up anchor by 8, then we should be good. So I'll start picking up anchor probably 7 or something, and slowly heading out there. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Might have to do an emergency anchor in a place that's going to be awash at one point, but just to bleed the engine, because we don't have a lot of sea room here anymore. But I think I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we're going to have no problems tomorrow. that it was just a little thing. I don't know why we had that issue. All right, subscribe. All right, so I'm approaching Ludmilla Creek right now, very soon. I was anchored off of North Point. Did not have any engine problems, as I said, to get there, but it was awful anchoring off of there because there were north winds. Even though it was all under 10 knots, it's still, you know, it's like a lee shore. It wasn't that I was scared, it was just rough. It was not a comfortable anchorage by any stretch. But I guess it was a trade-off. I still think it would have been really hard to round East Point in the morning today, and I would have had to get up a lot earlier too. So I did get a full night's sleep, and even more because I was sleepy because of the kind of seasickness. I took a scopolamine, and I didn't throw up, and I ate normally, so it was fine. But it was rough. You wouldn't want to anchor there. Unless you had a specific reason. This is also like the furthest I have anchored out for a haul-in date. They've usually had a mooring you could be on or something, but it's all due to Darwin's craziness. Darwin has these tides, right? These 25-foot tides, and it just makes everything hard. So that was why I had to go to the crappy anchorage. It's why I have to be a mile and a half out from the boatyard when I anchor. It just makes things worse. I mean, ideally, I guess they could have land that was not so tidal influenced and that it was always underwater, right, at some point. But it's still they almost every place requires you to go at least mid-tide or something. So I'm approaching Ludmilla Creek, and I'll let you see the haul out if it happens. I think it is. I did confirm it, but we're waiting on another boat to get in the water. All right, so I am here at Spot On Marine. I've been here for several days. We did get hauled out that day, pretty close to 9, pretty close to high tide. There's a little bit of current there, but we got in. I think most everything's ready and stuff. I guess it was, maybe this was best of bad options. I did get into Darwin Sailing Club. Probably could have paid a lot less to store the boat, but there's a lot more do-it-yourself aspect to that in terms of blocking it up, I think, and everything else. They promised me that they're gonna ratchet it down to the 5,000-pound blocks, but they haven't done it yet. When they first put it down, it wasn't level and wasn't draining right, but I got them to level it. And I guess my biggest regret about this place is the midges. I don't think I've ever been attacked by bugs so much on my cruising career, but this place is way up in the mangroves. And I just have over 100 midge bites on my legs, mostly below the ankle. But also some on my arms and stuff too. I think maybe they're the equivalent of no-see-ums in Florida, but they're really awful here. And I've been using bug spray, but it doesn't seem to make much difference. And I don't know, I think these bites last a long time. You have those welts on your legs for quite a long time compared to a mosquito bite, which will just go down. But I'll be leaving soon, and so hopefully those midge bites will heal. Have not been eaten by a crocodile yet here in the mangroves, so I guess that's a positive. Subscribe. But I'd say the season's more or less over, and we're getting ready for 2023. I don't know that we have a huge number of big projects going on. I think that I've got some more ideas about the engine, about the why we stalled out. I'll work on that. We want to get the bottom painted, and I don't know what else. We might get the sail restitched. One of the things, I found a rip in the Genoa. I got it repaired at an upholstery shop. It was not the ideal repair that maybe a sailmaker would have done, but it was something. It was better than the sail tape, I think, and it wasn't that expensive, and they did it on at a moment's notice, so that was quite nice. So yeah, this is a tip. If you have the mini work to do or Dodger work to do, that kind of canvas work, sometimes it's better to go to an upholsterer than it is to a sailmaker, because the upholsterers typically are less expensive, probably more available, and so that. But for sail work, you really want a sailmaker. So I do think probably both Genoas need to be restitched, because they've been, they're just, I think the stitching just doesn't last that long. So I think that's the issue with the Genoa that we've been flying, and then the one in the bag also seems like it needs some restitching to be done. All right, so subscribe. Subscribe to Slow Boat Sailing, where we give you the stories of the most interesting sailors in the world in our round-the-world adventure. I left the boat there in Darwin. We'll give you season 6 in the coming weeks and months, where we sail from Darwin to Indonesia.